So this video is an introduction to sharpening kitchen knives, specifically that have a micro bevel. I'm going to be using a sharpening technique that I like to teach due to its relative simplicity. I'll also be using one of the cheaper stones available on the market as an affordable way for people to get into knife sharpening. The video itself is actually going to be quite comprehensive, and it's going to contain a lot of information that you'll be able to transfer between a wide range of different sharpening techniques at a later date. It's important to ensure that you're using a sharpening method that's appropriate, and things that you need to take into consideration are the type of knife that you're sharpening, the stone that you're using, but also personal preference. So in this video we're going to be sharpening on a whetstone. This one's nothing fancy, it's about £20 or less. They tend to have different cutting grades on either side. This one has a 1000 grade, which is the blue, and a 3000 grade, which is the white. Whetstones are designed to be used completely saturated with water, so it's a good idea to fully immerse the stone in clean water and leave it for around 5 minutes before we use it. These cheaper stones come with a rubber mat, and this is going to help prevent the stone from sliding around on the surface while we're sharpening. You're going to want to make sure that you carry out your sharpening on a surface that can get both a little wet and mucky, ideally something that is easy to wipe down afterwards. These are a good introductory stone if you're interested in getting into sharpening using a stone, but you haven't got much experience. These cheaper stones are going to give you a good feel for the knife sharpening, and really it's going to allow you to develop your sharpening technique without the concern of damaging one of the more expensive stones. With time, it's likely that you'll want to invest in a more professional stone, such as a Japanese water stone, and when you do, you're definitely going to notice the difference. If you enjoy your sharpening, then a Japanese water stone is really going to allow you to take it to the next level. So, the knife that I'm going to be sharpening today is a Koivu Knives custom-made 9-inch German-style chef's knife. Here on the cutting-edge profile of the knife, you may see the light reflecting off the knife's secondary bevel or micro bevel. The technique that I'm going to demonstrate today is specifically for knives with a micro bevel. And this is a Western style blade shape, and these tend to have a pronounced curvature to the profile, the cutting edge. This is something that we will need to take into consideration when we're sharpening. So while our stone is soaking in the water, we're going to discuss the main principles of knife sharpening and how to get the most out of our time sharpening a knife. So, depending on whether you're right or left-handed, you're going to keep the handle of the knife in your dominant hand. So, I'm right-handed, and firstly I'm going to hold the knife in the typical way for cutting. I'm going to turn the knife horizontal from the surface I'm sharpening on, and as you can see, my index finger is going to be positioned on the heel of the blade, but not too close to the sharp edge. And it's my dominant hand that's going to maintain the correct sharpening angle, and it's this index finger that will help apply light pressure when passing the back half of the knife over the stone. Your other hand is going to be positioned between the middle and the top of the blade. It's going to help steady the strokes, and it will control the pressure applied to the top half of the blade. It's important to remember that it's only very light pressure that needs to be applied when sharpening using most techniques. If you apply too much pressure, you run the risk of changing the profile of your knife and damaging your stone. It's only the micro bevel of the knife that we want to sharpen, and holding the knife this way is going to allow you to sharpen one side of that bevel. To sharpen the other side of the micro bevel, you're going to need to spin the knife round in your hand, like so, and it's going to be the thumb that now applies the pressure instead of the index finger. And your less dominant hand still plays the same role of applying the slight pressure to the top half of the knife blade as it passes the stone. And now that we know how to hold the knife correctly, we need to determine the correct angle to sharpen the knife. The micro bevel of knives is generally set between 17 to 20 degrees. At 17 degrees, a knife will initially feel very sharp, but it will be more susceptible to damage as the edge will be thinner, and it will dull quicker. At 20 degrees, a blade's micro bevel might not feel quite as sharp initially, but it will be more robust, and is likely to feel like it dulls less quickly. If you don't know what angle your micro bevel of your knife is set to, then it's probably best to aim for that more robust 20-degree angle. While it may be tempting to set your knife to 17 degrees, you're more likely to develop damage, and this will take considerable amount of time and effort to undo next time you sharpen. We're going to use the stone itself to have a look at what 17 to 20 degrees looks and feels like. So let's take out our whetstone from the water and place it on its rubber non-slip mat with the coarser blue side facing up. Lay the blade of the knife flat on the stone with the cutting edge profile facing you. Be careful not to move it around too much as you may scratch the blade. Raise the spine of the knife off of the surface, leaving the cutting edge profile of the blade still in contact with the stone. As you do this, you're adjusting the angle that the microbevel sits on the horizontal surface. When it lays flat, it's at roughly 1 degree, and 90 degrees is the angle that the blade is used when we're cutting. To make a quick estimation, you can angle the blade halfway between the 1 and 90 degree angle for a 45 degree angle. Half it again to reach approximately 22 degrees. Now lower the spine of the knife just a couple more millimeters towards the stone to reach somewhere around 20 degrees. If you want to be more meticulous about it, you can use a protractor and make yourself a template at the exact angle that you're after. This wooden guide that I've made is set to 20 degrees. Now while I won't use it during the actual sharpening, it allows me to see the distance that the spine should sit from the stone when I'm holding it at the correct angle. So now that we've established what the angle should look and feel like, let's take a look at the sharpening stroke that we're going to make. So let's first spin the stone around so that it runs lengthways. Place the knife on the stone so that the microbevel closest the heel of the knife is in contact with the stone. Place your second hand on the knife for support and adjust to the correct sharpening angle. Pass the entire length of the knife from the heel to its tip at a roughly 45 degree angle across and down the stone. As the profile of the knife starts to curve towards the tip, you will need to raise your dominant hand a little to maintain contact between the microbevel and the stone. The more pronounced the curve of a blade, the higher the hand will need to be raised towards the end of the stroke. Take your time to assess how high you should be raising your hand to maintain the contact through the length of the blade, and remember that your 17 to 20 degree angle should still stay the same. Once you've come to the end of your stroke, lift your knife off the stone and back into the position ready to make the next stroke. Remember to apply a little pressure with the index finger and your fingertips during the stroke. Make the next couple of strokes quite slowly, and remember, maintain the correct angle, apply subtle pressure, raise your hand a little towards the end of the stroke to maintain the contact, and use the whole of the stone. Once that you feel that you're managing to keep all of these factors in mind, you can begin to pick up the pace a little. Remember that this is about developing the skill, so try not to rush into bad habits. You will need to make the same stroke as many times as it takes to develop a slight burr on the opposite side of the microbevel. On a relatively dull knife, this could easily take 100 consistent strokes. The burr will form on the new apex of the microbevel as it becomes so thin that it's quite easily folded over to one side during the sharpening process. Periodically feel for the burr by placing the spine of the knife in your hand and lightly running your fingertips off the edge of the microbevel. Check the entire length of the cutting edge to see if the burr has formed. In an area where there is no burr, you should consider how your technique may need to be adjusted when that area of the blade is in contact with the stone. As you sharpen, apply additional water to the surface of the stone. This will help flush off the removed particles from the steel of the knife and stop them from clogging the surface of the stone. Once you have a burr formed along the entire length of the bevel, it's now time to swap sides. Turn the knife around and again position the knife with its heel on the stone. Adjust to the correct angle and pass the tip across the entire stone roughly at the 45 degrees. Remember, apply the same subtle pressure as the first side. Raise your hand a little towards the end of the stroke and use the whole of the stone. Take your time on this side too. I often find that there can be a tendency to rush the process, but remember that you're developing a skill for life. putting in that extra time is really going to pay off in the long run. You're going to make enough passes to transfer the burr from one side to the other side. This will likely take the same amount of strokes as the other side. Once you've finally transferred the bevel effectively, spin the knife round to the first side and again make 10 passes. Then swap back to the other side and make 9 passes. Each time you swap over, reduce the number of passes by 1 until you've reached 0. Now flip the stone over to its more refined side, which on this stone is the white 3000 grade side. Using the same technique as the blue side of the stone, start with 20 passes across the stone, then flip the knife to the other side, 19, flip again, 18, and so on, all the way back to 0. Now the final stage to sharpening is to hone or strop your blade's bevel. Honing takes a fraction of the time of sharpening and makes a considerable difference to the sharpness of the knife. Traditionally, leather is used to strop knives. That being said, you can also use canvas and denim to hone the steel, and a small amount of white jeweler's rouge can make all the difference. For the sake of this video, I'm going to use a piece of leather roughly the same width as a wide belt, and I'm going to apply a little bit of jeweler's rouge to the leather, which will approximately make the grit the equivalent of around 10,000. Remember that the jeweler's rouge is just an addition, and you can strop without it. Place the ends of the leather under the stone so that it's raised off of the surface. Hold the stone with your less dominant hand at the sides to stop it from slipping and to keep your fingers out of the way of your sharp knife. We're going to be using the same technique, but instead of using the stone, we're going to be using the strop material instead. Again, we're going to use the same pattern starting with 20. Then as we flip the knife, we reduce the number by 1 and repeat until we're back to 0. Once you've stropped your blade, rinse off your stone, leave it out to air dry before storing it away. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you found the technique easy, then you may wish to move on to a technique that will allow you to sharpen a bit quicker in the future. Now it's time to go and try out your newly sharpened knife.